Many times a garden will end up costing people way more than they produce. It's easy to go in those garden centers and come out with tools, fertilizer, mulch, seeds, plants, pots, sprinklers, so many things that will add to the cost of whatever you are trying to produce. And if you don't end up having a huge garden, you can actually go in the hole. So in this video, I'm going to share with you how I stay out of those garden centers to make sure that if I do produce something, which I hope I do, I won't be in the hole and it will actually come out ahead. I hope you enjoy this video about frugal gardening. Hi everyone, I'm Bonita from rural Kansas and I am early retired. I retired early at almost 58 years old in October of 2023. I am now 60 years old. I am riding it out until Social Security kicks in, and I love frugal living. I share tips and tricks on this channel, and it has afforded me the opportunity and choices to have the freedom that I wanted at an earlier age. I hope you enjoy this video. The first big thing that can break your budget is purchasing seeds. I haven't purchased seeds in a couple of years. I bought them a couple of years ago at Dollar Tree when they were still 4 for $1. That is now a thing of the past. And I just purchased the ones that I needed. But I use a lot of scraps from the grocery store along with other things that I purchase where I can dry the seeds, because those you have essentially already paid for. So why not use them? Some of the seeds that you can dry and reuse are things from pumpkins, peppers, melons, squash, zucchini, cucumbers. And here are the green pepper seeds that I have dried over the last couple of years. As you can see, there's no need to buy pepper seeds. You can do this with sweet peppers, jalapenos, any type of pepper that you like. And then I wanted to show you how I got all of these lettuce seeds for free that I dried. And then sometimes when your plants get too hot, too cold, too wet, they will grow up and bolt like this. They will flower on the end, and this is called bolting. And when these dry, you can break open all of these little seed pockets and save the seeds. This is from lettuce. This one is dried, and see, it's ready to be harvested. All of those little tiny buds are now pockets of seeds. And I have to admit, since I had so many lettuce seeds already dried, I was lazy last year. When they started to bolt at the end of the summer, I just broke off those tops with all those seed pockets and I just put it back into my planter. I left it there all winter long to just disintegrate. And then this year I had volunteer lettuce and I didn't have to plant any. And then I buy those green onions in the little bunch. I put them in a clear vase that I already own with some water, let them grow roots, and I plant those. And I do that 2 or 3 times a year. And then we just reuse those onions. We use the tops until the bottoms get really big. Then I harvest the bottoms, chop them, and freeze them. And I do that cycle again. You know, I have some giant celery plants. Those I cut off the base about 3 inches, put them in some water, waited until they either grew roots or got slimy, put them in some dirt, and then they took off, and they have been growing now for more than 3 years. Old potatoes, save those eyes when they start to grow, plant those, and those will produce some potatoes. You can do the same with sweet potatoes. And then if you happen to have some tomatoes go bad, I just throw them in my compost, throw them out into the area where I am growing things, and a lot of those will come up volunteer the next year, and then you can separate and grow your tomatoes. I know there's many more than that, but those are the main ones that I have experimented with and used. So buying seeds can be so expensive. I have seen them anywhere from $2.59 up for a small package of seeds, and that can get expensive really quickly. The next one is containers and pots and planters. I try to reuse a lot of the things that I have for that specific purpose, especially when I'm starting my seeds. Let me show you what I mean. One of the ways that I save on having a garden and having produce is I save containers and I use them to grow things in. This had tomatoes in it. It just had a little cardboard top that peeled off. It has little holes in the bottom, but the very bottom of it is pretty secure. I can put a little milk carton cut in half underneath of it if it's leaking, but as long as I don't fill it too full, no water comes out the bottom. But these are great for growing, and I have a bunch of these. I also cut off the bottoms of milk jugs. I use them to grow. I use them to bail water out of my planters out in the yard when we have too much rain. These things come in handy so much, and so I never waste a milk jug. I also have little yogurt containers that I grow things in. I have a whole bunch of these, and I don't throw them away. They are glass. They work great. This had kiwi in it, and look, it has little holes in the bottom. This was the lid, and I'm just going to put it underneath. It also has some holes in it, but I mean, if it starts to leak, I can always put a milk jug under there, but this will be a great growing tool. So look at your containers before you toss them, and that way you don't have to buy extra pots. When it comes to preserving items and storing them for use, if we don't use them fresh right away, I will freeze a lot of items. I will chop my celery and freeze it to keep it harvested. I will chop and freeze my peppers, my onions, and those types of things. I usually do lazy gardening is what I call it, because I don't want to have to blanch things to be able to freeze them. So I try to use up fresh things that I'm not going to freeze right away in creative ways. And then the things that I can freeze, I reuse Ziploc bags that I get from purchasing things. If I've purchased tortillas or cheese that is shredded in the package, anything with a Ziploc top works great as a freezer bag. I don't worry about it saying specifically that it's for freezing, because normally my stuff is not going to stay in there more than a few months before we use it up. So it serves me fine, and I don't have to buy extra packaging to then store my freezer foods. And I am a big believer in sharing seeds, sharing plants, sharing flowers, all of those things that we do out here in the country. And maybe you have some neighbors in the city that you can swap with. But if you have extra pepper seeds like I do, maybe you could swap with someone for a different type of seed. All of my irises out in my yard came from my aunt, who had every color of iris there ever was, and she shared with me, and neighbors who had extra irises that were just getting too thick. Also, I don't spray for my dandelions. I leave those as pollinators for my plants, because things like squash and peppers need pollinators for them to grow properly and as large as they are able to. I also like flowers that come up year to year to year. Again, I'm a lazy gardener, and I have morning glories that I started a few years ago, and they're just coming up wild everywhere now, and they are great pollinators as well. And I love my cactus and my cactus flowers that are also great attractors of bees and butterflies. Now, I live in a rural area and I have my own water well. It does require some electricity to pump the water, but I don't have to pay a monthly water bill. A lot of people are focused on how much water it costs them to maintain a garden. And rain and catching rainwater is always a good way, but sometimes we don't always get the rain. Right now, it's been really humid in the house. We've been running the dehumidifier. If I needed the water for that, I could use it to flush the toilet. I could use it to put on my plants. But right now, we are saturated. So it is going down the shower drain, which if you lived in the city, you would want to use it to either flush your toilet, or you would want to pour it outside if you could, because you would be paying for sewage as well if you poured it down your shower. But we don't pay for sewage either. Conserving water can be as easy as trying to make sure that you water in the early mornings or the late evenings. It will evaporate less, your plants will get more of the water, and if you do it during the day, it can actually fry your plants, especially if you get some of the water on the leaves. It's really hard on them and it uses more water. So that's one of the ways that you can conserve how much water you need to keep your garden going. When I started my plants outside, I used old cardboard boxes to line the bottoms to cut back on the weeds. Now, over time, the weeds have come back because the boxes have disintegrated. Some people will shred boxes or add that to their soil. That's always something that you can do. But if you add it to your soil, again, it will use a little bit more water to soak that up. And I like for leaves and things like that to be my mulch. I don't buy any mulch. I don't buy any fertilizer. If I do end up getting some type of fungus or bugs, I will use something natural to treat that. I've only got squash bugs 1 year. So I'm very, very comfortable going out and picking things, knowing that everything in my yard is organic and that there's been nothing done to it other than rainwater and natural growth. So, doing some of these lazy gardening hacks can actually make it easier to garden. Sometimes the idea of having a garden is just overwhelming. And if we have physical difficulties like I do, it can be overwhelming, but yet it's something I still enjoy and I look forward to doing. So I make it as easy and as lazy and as cheap as I possibly can. So I hope these hacks are helping someone out there today, because these things get moved into my house during the winter. I have a sunroom that I use as my office, and I keep a lot of this growing all year round. I don't start new every year. Again, I'm a lazy gardener. I keep my onions going, my Swiss chard, my celery. I keep tomato plants and green peppers going. And this year I will be keeping my basil plants going over the winter. And that gives us some fresh produce, some greenery in the house when everything outside is yellow and brown. And it makes it where I can harvest just a few steps right from my kitchen. I also keep one of those small milk jugs cut in half right by my sink. All of my compost goes in there. Eggshells, banana peels, coffee grounds, tops and bottoms of things that I'm not going to save for veggie broth. Anything like that, I throw right in there. And if I'm not harvesting seeds right now, the middles of peppers and other things I'm not harvesting with seeds will go in that compost. And then I throw it all out into my garden beds. And sometimes I get volunteer things that come up from my compost as well. So sometimes I don't even have to plant the pepper seeds this year because I have some coming up from my compost. And you can recognize these plants over time, but that's also a great way to replenish your soil and also get some free plants. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that you will share in the comments below any lazy, cheap gardening hacks that you use that would be helpful to anyone that follows this channel. So many times, gardening is passed off as too expensive and too difficult, and that's why I wanted to share this video. Thanks for listening today, and I hope to see you in the next one.